HOA president trying to remove my dog. My parents have been living in the same neighborhood for nearly 25 years. They own a condo. I had to move back to care for my mom as she had cancer. While she was recovering, my dog passed away. During this time, I had to deal with the HOA belittling me when I requested an exception to allow my truck during this extraordinarily difficult time. They rejected me via calling my dad and then emailing me that I am not the homeowner and cannot make requests. I complied and I never parked my truck here, and I allowed my friend to borrow my truck in the meanwhile. I adopted a new dog for emotional support. She was a puppy mill mom rescue and, as such, required lots of training over the last 4 months. This included overcoming her fear of leaving the house. We sat in front of my house with toys and treats, and finally, one day, she was willing to go walk several feet to the dumpsters in front of my house. And then the HOA president came up to me and asked me to move. I was polite and I explained the situation to her, that I couldn't go to the public road because of my dog's fear. She was tearing up, asking me to have compassion for her children who play there, by the dumpster. I did get sassy and I told her that I have dung bags and the urine would be recycled through the nitrogen cycle. There's ducks, iguanas, and stray cat urine everywhere. Also, I see dogs walking there all the time. I was petty. I did send the HOA a complaint about the litter by the dumpsters, which was candy wrappers and toy gun foam bullets, and I did it knowing that it was the HOA president's children. And now, 2 months later, my dog walks fine on a leash on public road, but the HOA president has hit me with these emails on a Friday afternoon before the holiday weekend. The request is that I have 24 hours to remove my dog, and if I don't fill out accommodation paperwork, like for ESA and service dog, then she states that I'll have to pay $100 per day if the dog isn't removed, a demand to remove the dog by animal control via an attorney and to pay all the attorney fees. I had a dog for 18 years here before, and I'm not sure why they are using the standards of my dad's first contract from 25 years ago when they did not allow dogs in the neighborhood. The rules have since changed. I'm trying out one of these scammy ESA websites because I'm desperate, simply because my psychiatrist office is closed until after Christmas, and I don't even know when I can get an appointment to see if she can help me. I did email her just in case. On the suggestion to contact a lawyer, we get the reply. I'm just wary because I live in Florida and I find the state laws often disagree with the HOA. I don't have the money to lose on getting legal with them, and it's not my home, unfortunately. I feel bad because neither of my parents speak English well, so they're consistently following rules and keeping out of trouble. HOAs just freaking suck and I'm beyond frustrated. Would you stand up against the president, or how would you take it if you were in this situation? HOA banned all e-mobility devices. So I own an apartment in a condo on the Upper East Side. I've had an e-scooter since I moved in back in 2016. I actually bought an e-scooter back then because of how far east the building is. It's about a half a block from the river. About a year ago, I got a letter from the building manager saying that anyone with an e-mobility device would have to remove it from their apartments and they could no longer be kept anywhere in the building. It was just a letter, and there was no official change in the house rules of the condo, so I just ignored it. Well, this past October, I received an amendment to the building's house rules, and there it was. No e-mobility devices would be allowed anywhere in the building, and there would be a very large penalty of $1,500 if anyone was reported with one, and $750 each time thereafter. A month after that, there was a board meeting at which time I made my case for an exemption due to the fact that my scooter is UL certified and I've had it since moving into the building. I never leave it while charging and never overnight. I was shut down. I then made a presentation for the board going into detail about UL certified devices as opposed to the devices that are catching fire and how they are completely different. I even had the opportunity to meet over email the global director of UL Solutions, who was willing to speak to my board about UL certified lithium-ion batteries. They had no interest in learning about it, and then once again shut me down. I then offered a concession suggesting that I keep the scooter in the bike room and purchase a camera to ensure that I wasn't charging it on the premises and that I'd only charge it in my office far away from the building. Got another no. So now I'm looking at going political on this one. I'll be meeting with an assemblywoman in my district about this situation, and if an HOA can make these rules in direct opposition to city laws, which allow e-mobility devices and even encourage it for environmental reasons. I also discovered a bill that was passed a couple of years ago, which is called the Electric Vehicle Rights Act. The bill makes it illegal for an HOA to ban a unit owner from having a charging station in their unit. Now, it was meant for electric cars, but if an e-mobility device could be classified as a vehicle, then, well, I could make the argument that a charger for my scooter could be considered a charging station, and the HOA can't ban me from using it in my apartment. So there's now a bill being proposed by Senator Felder of New York, which makes it a requirement to register e-mobility devices as vehicles. I don't know if the bill will pass, but if it does, I believe I'll be able to win this fight. Are there any HOA lawyers interested in getting involved? I mean, buildings all over the city are banning these devices, and people need to be educated on the truth about the devices that are UL certified, or the ones that meet UL standards. This is a tricky one because this is a mobility device that people need to get around, and if you ban it, some people are going to be in a whole host of trouble, especially if they have no other alternative. How would you handle it if you were in these shoes? As we get into the next story, I have to tell you something. Hey, also I added more stories to the new 24/7 HOA Karen radio stream on the channel, perfect to binge or play for background noise while you sleep. Check out the link in the description or on the front page of the channel. It looks like this. I think my mom is being scammed and or discriminated against by the HOA. Please help. Posted by Guilty Bee 1562. My mom lives in a condoplex where she purchased a home several years ago, and it's managed by an HOA. When she first moved in, she said that the monthly fees were $240 a month, and then sometimes there are random special assessments. Last year, the complex came under new management, and since then, they have raised the fees to $400 a month. This year alone, she's already paid $10,000 in fees, and she just told me that they have intent to raise them again next year to over $700 a month. Now, I understand that there are always fees associated with owning a condo, but there's several reasons why I have issue with this. And the first is that the complex is not even that nice. It's very old and it doesn't look like much. All of the outside of the buildings, as well as probably the inside, are completely outdated. The second issue I have with this is that from my understanding, the monthly fees are mostly to cover the maintenance for the various amenities in the complex. However, the pool has not been open for use at all this year, and she also said that the clubhouse has never been opened in the 5 years that she's been living there, except for the HOA meetings. So what exactly are those monthly fees going towards? She also sent me a copy of all the charges that have been posted to her account since last year, and some of them just seem completely ridiculous, especially when taking into account that, I'm assuming in all fairness, she's not the only resident that has been charged with these outrageous fees. I found another unit in the complex that was listed not too long ago, and it says that the monthly HOA is $240, which is the original amount that she was paying, so I think it's a little suspicious. But my stepdad told me that the fees for each unit can vary depending on the size and the location in the complex. They sent out a letter with notice of the plans to increase the monthly fees, and they acknowledged in the letter that the community has been neglected for a long time. However, none of us are well versed in the inner workings of the HOA, and we all think that there's something more going on. I have tried telling my mom that she needs to talk to other residents, but she keeps to herself a lot and doesn't feel comfortable doing that. So I'm having to take matters into my own hands to help her with it. By the way, I also think it's worth mentioning that she's a single Asian woman and lives in a predominantly white neighborhood in Alabama. She's had 2 charges this year around $2,500. One says it was for electrical remediation, and the other charge was a violation fine that she said was for peeling paint when she went to go help clean the clubhouse. Do you think that OP has any legal grounds for this? Let me know. HOA story time. No security light allowed? No problem. Posted by Jaffe Brutus. Years ago, when my wife and I had purchased a home, the builder had told us that it might be part of an HOA, depending on how many homes that they ultimately constructed. We were among the first 5 buyers, so we pretty much had free reign to change what we wanted via permissions from the builders, but those changes would be added to what was turned over to the HOA, and for as long as we lived there, the changes could stay. The one change that we did add was a motion security light on the back of our fence, because my neighbor's kid would smoke MJ there and I didn't want to smell it sitting on my patio or when I had the windows open on nice evenings. Well, that went up my neighbor's butt sideways for whatever reason, and she refused to believe her kid would be doing that, even though it didn't point towards any other home, just the grass between my fence and the woods. It kept the kids from smoking the MJ there without calling the cops on something so foolish and petty. But since it was cleared from the builder, she couldn't do anything. Well, 6 months later, we end out with an HOA, and she makes it priority 1 to get the lights. Several other neighbors followed what I did, whose homes faced the wooded area, removed. The requirement to get it changed, since they were builder approved, was 80% of the community, so the only votes to keep came from those of us on the back of the property. So we have to remove them being permanent changes. Not even 3 days later, her kid is again back there smoking the MJ. The HOA counter to why I had it was to call the police non-emergency number, but that's absolutely stupid to risk freaking some kid's life up because he wanted to smoke, when that's an issue his parents, who, remember, don't believe he does it, deal with. So now I am pretty livid. This North American land whale cried to the point that I had to remove a cheap and non-disruptive fix. She refused to be a parent and keep her kid from impeding on us, and so now it's time for me to be petty. The next day, after her kid first went back there, I go out and I buy a 12-foot section of 4x4, wire, concrete, a large planter, and 3 6,000 lumen floodlights, and build essentially a mini portable stadium light setup, rigged to the motion sensor, so whenever anyone passed by my fence, instead of being a small area immediately behind my house lit up, the sun came out to the woods with one light giving her home an X-ray. The first time her kid went back there, it was glorious. I got a picture of him with his device in hand before he skirted off so I could show her proof, and it sent her through the roof, getting those free X-rays. I showed her the picture, and she still didn't care, saying that if it goes off again, she'll call the police, and I was fine with it because I told her that they'd see the same picture that I'd just shown her. In reality, they wouldn't, but Martha the manatee didn't know that, and I didn't expect her to try and call my bluff, which she never did. Just complained to the HOA. A lot. In the morning time, I'd lay the contraption down so it couldn't be seen, and raise it up after it got dark. About a week after this, I get a summons to the HOA meeting that's happening that week, and since it was disciplinary for my contraption, their lawyer was there and they want to hear the case. So I lay everything out, from builder to pictures showing how the original light didn't shine any brighter than the one on our porch, and it couldn't be seen from inside the homes. Her vendetta to change the HOA rules to suit what she wanted, and 3 of the 5 other neighbors who had to remove their security lights were also there to argue for getting them back when I went. After about 40 minutes, the lawyer comes back and pretty much said, "Well, Mr. and Mrs. Jaffe Brutus, you're right. This isn't a permanent structure, so it technically is allowed, but you can't have a light facing her property any longer. In addition, by the 1st of the next month, you will all be allowed to reinstall your smaller lights, as they did provide a measure of security that benefits the property as a whole." So Martha the manatee was blessed with another week of the sun on a pole and being mad about it. Those of us who lived facing the woods got our lights back, and after reselling the lights, I made most of my money back that I spent on supplies making that monstrosity. It was absolutely worth spending the few $100s to out-petty a bad parent and insufferable neighbor. My HOA complaint inadvertently broke up an entitled mother Karen's marriage by Moonbeam19. Do dog moms count? This happened a few years ago, but I still think about it. After being blessed with great neighbors over the years, I then started taking it for granted. And then Luna, her 4 dogs, all the same breed, and family, 2 teens and a husband, move in the house next door. It started off well enough. Luna was friendly and the kids and the husband seemed nice. But she soon decided that the best place for her dogs to go potty was my backyard. I didn't agree, and after suffering in silence for a few weeks, I'm not very confrontational, I finally told her that my backyard wasn't her personal dog park. When they got home from work, they would let their dogs loose to go running in my backyard to play and go potty. One day, I happened to catch them and came out on my patio to tell them to cut it out. The dogs turned around and started running towards me while barking aggressively. Fortunately, her husband called them off before the little ankle biters got to me. And it wasn't just the dog that liked to hang out in my backyard. Luna liked to walk around my backyard while talking on her phone. One of the things I like about my house is the privacy. It backs to woods, so I don't have a lot of curtains on my back windows and doors. But since Luna liked walking around my yard, I was forced to curtail my habit of cleaning while scantily dressed. And it was creepy. Once, after it had snowed, I realized that someone had walked up to my back patio and had been peeping in my French doors. Not long after, someone left a gift of junk on my front porch welcome mat. Geez, wonder who did that. But then, Luna seemed to want to repair our rather rocky relationship and asked me what time I got off work. We could do cocktails and hang out. I thought, whatever, Karen. So I told her, but no get-together ever materialized. I realized later that she just wanted to know what time I got home from work. What she didn't know was that I sometimes worked at home. On one of those days, I caught her once again letting the dogs loose in my yard. So I took a photo and I sent it to the HOA. I think she was also sneaking her dogs into my other neighbor's fenced backyard. The ramifications were swift. That complaint was the straw that broke the camel's back. The marriage was already on shaky ground, and the husband was tired of her and her dog hoarding. I only saw 4 dogs at the time, but there were more I didn't notice because they all looked alike. The next thing I knew, she and the dogs had moved back to South America. The kids went to live with relatives and go to college, and the husband was acting like someone who won the lottery. He always seemed somewhat grumpy before, but after she left, he was smiling and friendly. And then he bought a Harley, got a girlfriend, and proceeded to rid the house of copious amounts of urine-stained carpets. He was eventually evicted from the house, yes, they were renters, because the owners were sick of the complaints and the fines and decided to move back in. Luna had apparently a gift for ticking off the neighbors on my block. The weird thing is that there were a couple of vacant lots and a dog park less than a block away. But apparently, her neighbors' yards were the best place to take her dogs. I gotta know, do you agree with this comment? A lot of municipalities limit the number of adult dogs to a certain amount. Where I grew up, it was 3. She's also lucky the dogs weren't shotgunned for their aggression on someone else's property. Threats from neighbors after I told them to remove their fence off my property. A few months ago, I told my neighbors that they had to remove their fence off of my property, which was 2 fence panels right next to our driveway, making it a very tricky situation for ever redoing our driveway if we would allow these fence panels and adverse possession. I told them to remove the panels after he was yelling and raging at me about our tree, and that I better come on his property to rake the leaves. It sounded like an or else threat. I told him that I was not legally obligated to, however, he was legally obligated to remove his fence. He didn't remove his fence, and I received some abuse through text messages, and they started talking to neighbors hoping for support. Fast forward to today. I asked in a nice voice when he was going to relocate the panels to his own property. He asked me why. I told him, well, because it's our property where we pay the taxes over, and after consultation, I was told he would need to remove the panels. I told him that my husband could help him. He went into a rage. He said that I had created an enemy and to better watch my back. He raged that my husband never did anything, that we didn't pay anything, that I didn't own anything because I'm not American. I stayed calm but firm and asked if this was a threat, that I wouldn't allow harassment nor discrimination. Now, I'm European with a green card, and that I didn't want them trespassing. More abuse and screaming followed that I made an enemy, and them indicating that there would be retaliation. Oh, and that they had been good to me, after which I answered that threatening and screaming is not treating me good. And then he removed the fence. The fence is gone. I'm not sure if I should go to the police. We are getting more security cameras. In the past, he would always come on our property to inspect, asking me the names of my plants and if they were weeds, complaining that we didn't have window screens, and asking what my bee hotels were, complaining about our lawn and blah blah blah. For 4 years, I was always afraid that they would start code enforcement games. I mean, yeah, he says he's not going to do anything, but if you ever have a neighbor with a track record like that, are you really going to believe him? Like, actions speak louder than words. I have had bad neighbors before. Wouldn't trust them as far as I can throw them, and I can't throw them very far. What would have you done? This one is called Entitled Mother Tried to Steal My PlayStation, posted by Save Ferris Brother. This is the story of my cousin, who is the entitled parent in the story. Let's start with some backstory. When I was 17, I met the man who would become my husband. He was 18. I became really close with his older sister, who was divorced, and I watched her son, who was 9 when I met him, and 11 when this story takes place. He called me almost aunt, and I called him nearly nephew, and we had a great relationship. He always wanted to hang out with me, and I occasionally had him over to my parents' house for a sleepover, when his mom needed a break or whatever. He was very into video games, so at one point I went out and bought a gaming system like his so he could play when he was over, and so I could get practice and get better at his favorite games. Hate to be schooled by a 10-year-old, right? My boyfriend was away at a university about 4 hours away, and I was going home to community college and working almost full time. My sister had moved out and gotten married, and my parents had let me convert her bedroom into a sitting room for myself. I'd won a TV through a contest at work, and I moved my computer table and desk into there, and I got a second-hand couch from someone at work who was moving. The 2 rooms were connected by a bathroom, and I got a cheap dorm-type fridge for my birthday for my parents when I turned 18 to complete the room. It was a very cool setup. Alas, it was not meant to last. My cousin, Dad's brother's daughter, was getting divorced and needed a place for her and her son, who was 10, to stay. We moved all of my stuff into the unfinished basement. My dad threw up some temporary walls and a door to delineate my room, and they moved in. Kid in my room, cousin in my sister's room. I felt bad for Kay and tried to engage with him, but he wasn't anything like my nearly nephew. His parents were very religious and didn't let him watch much TV, play video games, or anything like that. I had some very G-rated games, no violence, that had come with my system, and his mom let him play those. He got hooked and would constantly go down to my room and want to play. Eventually, I moved the gaming system upstairs into a common area of the house so I could sleep in on weekends and not be constantly coming home to finding him sitting on my bed playing the game. It meant that I had to give up my gaming time. I had become a bit of a gamer chick, but I did end up getting more sleep and he seemed very happy. They were supposed to stay for 3 months and that turned into 6 and then 9. They finally moved out just a few days short of their 11th month anniversary with us on a Saturday. I was at work and then out with friends that night. The next day I slept late and decided to move some of my stuff upstairs. I cleaned and then enlisted my dad for some of the heavy lifting. When I was almost done, I decided to hook up the TV and went down to grab the gaming system. It was gone, along with a few of my games and both of my controllers. I texted my cousin. I said, "Do you guys have my PlayStation?" "Yes." "Okay, but I didn't give it to you. I need it back. When's a good time for you to drop it off here?"
"You haven't played with it in months. Kay had been playing with it, so I figured you wouldn't miss it."
"Understood, but I do miss it and I want it back."
"But Kay enjoys it so much. He even bought 2 games for it with his birthday money."
"It's nice that he enjoys it. You should probably get him one of his own, but I still need mine back."
"It's not very ladylike for a girl your age to be playing video games anyway."
"It's not up to you to decide if I'm enough of a lady. It's not very ladylike to steal either, but here we are."
"There's no need to be rude. I'm not going to allow you to take his video games away from him."
"I'm not taking his video games away. You're returning my video games to me. He never actually had a gaming system for me to take away. He was using mine. You shouldn't have taken it in the first place."
"But he bought games for it. He used it all the time. As far as I'm concerned, you gave it to him. You never told us you'd want it back. You're the one who's trying to steal from a child."
"I'm coming up to my room all the time, so I moved it upstairs to my dad's TV. How is that giving it to him? I'm not arguing anymore. I want my gaming system back." She stopped responding after that. It took a few weeks, more text, and a phone call from my dad to her, a phone call from my dad to his brother, and me fighting with my parents who just wanted to let her have it but wouldn't buy me a new one. One controller was broken beyond repair, and the other never really worked right, but the system worked fine. My parents were PO'd at me that I cut her out of my life after that, but I just kept telling them that as soon as she apologized, I'd forgive her. I'm still waiting. Am I the a-hole for wanting to name my son for a video game character? This was posted by Bluefykins 8675309. Tommy Two Tones Jenny reference. All right, let's dive right on in. My wife is 26 and I'm 27, and we're both big gamers. We actually met through playing a game together online, and it's important to us. We're expecting a baby boy in October, and we couldn't be happier. This will be the first child for all of us and the first grandchild and sibling on both sides of the families, so they're pretty excited to meet him too. Here's where the problem comes in. My wife and I were both greatly moved by the story of Arthur Morgan in Red Dead Redemption 2. We consider him one of the best fictional characters of all time. I've been playing video games for a long time, and his story is the only one to ever make me cry. It was my wife who suggested that we use Arthur Morgan as the first and middle names for our son. I mean, not only would we be paying tribute to our favorite character, there's nothing wrong or weird about the names, other than Arthur is a little old-fashioned now, but it's not like we're naming him Sonic the Hedgehog or Donkey Kong, right? My mother had a brother that died when I was about a year old, so I don't really have any memories of him. She's been pressuring us to name our son after him. There's nothing wrong with his name either. It's pretty common. Think something like Robert John. It's just not what we wish to name our sprout. My older brother let it slip to my mother that the name we chose was from a video game character, and she completely flipped out. She actually drove 30 minutes to our house so she could bang on the door and berate us in person for honoring someone who doesn't actually exist over her flesh and blood sibling. I understand that she still misses my uncle, and while this may be her grandchild, he is still first and foremost our son, and we already think of him as Arthur. That's going to be his name no matter how she feels about it. When we tried gently and then firmly to advise her that we respected her position, but that we weren't going to budge on ours, she walked out and told us that she would have nothing to do with our son and would never acknowledge him as family. Am I the a-hole for not making my mother happy and just giving her a freebie on this? I've actually always had a really good relationship with her, and it would hurt badly not to have her in my life or my son's life. My wife says that as parents, we're going to have to learn to advocate for ourselves because people are always going to be telling us that we've done something wrong and disagreeing with our parenting decisions. Well, OP, you are not the a-hole. She is. As a parent, as a father, this is despicable. Despicable. This is your child, not hers. It should be the name that you choose. Now, I understand that she is a little upset over the uncle, and I know that you didn't know him, but to say that she's not going to have anything to do with his life is just heartbreaking because that's her grandchild. I truly hope that she's just saying this out of anger and that you really work this out, because this would just be not a good thing. So I hope all the best works for you, OP. And after each of these stories, comment below if I'm right or wrong and what you think about it. Am I the a-hole for telling my parents that I'll move out and their problems are theirs to solve, not mine? This was posted by ThrowawayDuh67. To start off, I still live with my parents. I'm 27, and my sister is 30, and my parents are in their early 60s. My parents are really bad handling money. My father refuses to retire and get a proper retirement fund because his job doesn't pay him enough. My mom has never worked a day in her life by choice, and that's okay. But both of my parents were always reckless with finances to the point that my sister and I had to play the accountant and help them not go bankrupt. My sister and I still lived with my parents till recently because we'd only decide to move out if we found a place together or moved out with our significant others. But renting houses in my area are very expensive, and we always held it off because we had other priorities that we needed to take care of first. Last year, my sister got engaged to her boyfriend, and she decided that she move in with him. When she announced that she's moving out, obviously I was happy for her, but my parents started yelling about how selfish she is for moving out while my parents need financial support for the house. Anyway, a fight broke out and my sister has gone no contact with them. After that, my parents have been mad at me too because I always defended my sister's choice to move out, saying she's a 30-year-old woman and allowed to live her own life. A couple months ago, I proposed to my girlfriend. I'm out of the closet since my teens, and it was never a deal breaker for my parents. But when I proposed, all heck broke loose. My mom started accusing me of spending money on a stupid engagement ring instead of funding the house more. Now, I already help out with the house more than I can afford. And at that same time, I announced that I'll also start searching for houses to move out with my fiance, and then both mom and dad started calling me selfish for my sister for abandoning them when they have so many bank loans to pay off, and how I'm selfish for moving out while they're going through such a hard time. While I might be the a-hole, I told them that it was their responsibility. They're owing so much money to banks since they never properly took care of their finances. And because my dad refuses to retire and have a better retirement income, he stays stuck at a job that barely pays him a penny. I told him it's not my responsibility to always put my life on hold for their wrongdoings regarding jobs and financial troubles, when they had the choice to avoid most of these. Now, they give me the silent treatment because I was not an appreciative daughter, and I feel like I might be the a-hole. Am I? Well, OP, absolutely not. See, you want to take care of your parents and you want to help them. They helped you all 18 plus years of your life, which is what they're supposed to do. It's not a special thing. It's what they're supposed to do. But at the same time, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. By what you're doing is enabling them, just continuing to fund that. There is a better way to go about this. They need financial education, but you cannot force this on them. Unfortunately, I have had to learn this, and it sucks so bad. You want to change and you want to help people, but you just can't do it all by yourself. They have to want to make that decision to learn more, and it sucks as your parents, and it sucks to see, but there's only so much you can do for your own mental health and energy. You are not the a-hole, Hopi. I hope your parents get the help and you can be that positive influence on them, but ultimately it is their decision to better their lives, and it might take hitting rock bottom to realize that, but sometimes that is the way. Unfortunate as may be, that's the way it goes. So Hopi, you are not the a-hole. Am I the a-hole for being shocked that my friend will get married before me? Posted by Outrageous Mind 7879. I have this friend, let's call her Jane. We're in our mid-30s now, but we were roommates since freshman year in college. She's one of my closest friends, and I know her super well. And I know that for all of her 20s, she had horrendous luck with her love life and was extremely insecure about it. She always wanted to get married and have kids and kept ending up with douchebags who would cheat on her, or men who just straight up didn't like her, daddy issues, and crying about it. And I was always there for her through it and reassuring her how she won't die alone. But her love life kind of became a punchline in our group of friends, and sometimes she'd go along with it, especially once she got into her 30s and was still single. She'd say stuff like, yeah, guys, we all know I'm going to die alone all the time, and I know she was torn up about it, but we were always reassuring her that that's not the case, and she was in therapy about it. Anyways, about a year ago, she finally met an incredible man, and they fell in love almost instantly. He proposed to her last week, and she's just completely over the moon. I've never seen her this happy. This weekend, we all went out to celebrate, and all of our friends were saying how they're so happy for her after a long and difficult road, and it was really emotional. For context, I'm still single, no boyfriend, and I want to get married too, but I'm not a pathology like she was. And so I said, I can't believe Jane will get married before me. She started crying and stormed out, and the evening was completely spoiled. I tried calling her this weekend, but she was hysterical and said that I didn't have to point out that she's so unlovable, and it's a miracle she tricked someone into proposing. It's quite sad, but that's not what I meant, but that's her own baggage. I apologized, but also suggested that she should talk to her therapist about that reaction, and now she completely refuses to speak to me and won't answer my messages. A couple others in our friend group are on her side, and while some have said that she's overreacting and will come around. Am I the a-hole? The HOA finds me, but I'm not even in the HOA. Click the video on your screen so you don't miss the fallout of this one, and I'll see you there.